The heat of the late May sun poured over Ouagadougou as President Ibrahim Traoré set down a stack of papers on his desk. They were the latest education progress reports, numbers he'd personally pushed into the history books. The phone rang. It was Dr. Alonso Ouedraogo, his senior advisor. "Mr. President, we've just received an invitation from the United States. The White House wants you to join a live global forum on education, hosted by CNN. You'd be sharing the stage with Karoline Leavitt, their new press secretary." Ibrahim leaned back in his chair. The name was familiar. Karoline was young, sharp-tongued, and famous for taking shots at foreign leaders who challenged the Western playbook. "What's the format?" he asked. "2 guests, 1 stage. Theme: transforming education in the 21st century. They say it's to compare the American and African approaches." A slow smile spread across Ibrahim's face. At just 35, he had taken Burkina Faso from one of the lowest literacy rates in Africa to an education model studied by UNESCO. "Tell them I'll be there," he said. "The world deserves to see what Africa can teach." Washington, D.C. Inside the West Wing, Karoline Leavitt was flipping through a thick folder labeled Burkina Faso. "So this young president thinks he's going to teach America how to run schools?" She scoffed to her staff. She'd made her career out of dismantling her opponents on live TV, and she wasn't about to change now. Her aide, Emily Rodriguez, pointed out the numbers. "Karoline, Burkina Faso's literacy rate has more than doubled in 3 years. School completion is at record highs. Maybe a softer tone." "Emily," Karoline cut her off, "politics isn't about charity. These numbers? Inflated. My job is to show the world the truth." In Ouagadougou, the preparations began. Ibrahim met with Aminata Compare, his Minister of Education. "Facts are good," he said, scanning the charts. "But facts alone won't win this. We need stories. I want the faces behind these numbers. Students whose lives changed. Teachers who found purpose. Whole villages lifted by education." Aminata's list was staggering. Literacy up from 29% to 78% in just 3 years. 247 new schools built digital learning in 95% of institutions, 23 new technical universities. They were victories, but Ibrahim knew Karoline wouldn't play fair. Back in Washington, Karoline sharpened her attack. "I want every flaw you can find. Low electricity coverage, undertrained teachers, anything." Her senior aide, Michael Thompson, warned her, "Careful, Karoline. He's been recognized by both Harvard and UNESCO. If you go in swinging without evidence, you might miss, and the whole world will see it." "Michael," she smirked, "I've taken down bigger names than this." CNN headquarters, Atlanta Anderson Cooper looked over the debate outline with his producers. "No, soft questions," he said. "If sparks fly, let them. We want substance, not staged smiles." By the evening of May 22, 2025, the world was watching. The Ouagadougou presidential office connected Ibrahim to the Atlanta studio via satellite. His image appeared crisp and clear on the test monitor. In Washington, Karoline straightened her blazer and adjusted her earpiece. She looked into the camera with the confidence of someone who had already written the ending in her head. Neither of them knew. Within the next hour, the conversation about education would turn into something much bigger than anyone had planned. The CNN logo faded, and Anderson Cooper's voice filled living rooms around the globe. "Good evening." Tonight, a conversation on the future of education, featuring Burkina Faso's President Ibrahim Traoré and White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt. The screen split, one side showing Ibrahim in his book-lined presidential office, the red and green flag of Burkina Faso behind him, the other showing Karoline in a sleek Washington studio, framed by glowing monitors. Anderson turned first to Ibrahim. "Mr. President, Karoline has argued that developed nations like the U.S. should take the lead in shaping global education reform. What's your response?" Ibrahim's smile was warm but measured. Mr. Cooper, I respect America's achievements in education, but innovation has no nationality. Sometimes the best solutions come from the places the world least expects. Karoline leaned forward, her voice dipped in sarcasm. With all due respect, you lead a country where half the population was illiterate not long ago. How exactly do you lecture America, a country that gave the world Harvard, MIT, and Stanford on education? Ibrahim didn't flinch. It's because we've faced such challenges that we've learned to think differently. When you have little, you must be clever. Wealth doesn't guarantee wisdom. Karoline smirked. Clever? Where exactly did you go to school? Which American university? Because honestly, your resume sounds more like field training than formal education. The comment was sharp. Too sharp. Anderson frowned. That was unnecessary, he said. Unnecessary, but accurate, Karoline shot back. Ibrahim let the silence hang for a moment, then looked straight into the camera. Thank you, Ms. Leavitt. You've just given me the perfect example of the kind of education I don't believe in. One by one, images appeared on the broadcast feed. First-class civil engineering degree, Kwame Nkrumah University of Science. And technology, Ghana Masters in Public Administration, Sorbonne, Paris MBA, London School of Economics, completed while serving as an army officer. I'm fluent in French, English, Portuguese, Arabic, and 4 African languages. How many languages do you speak, Ms. Leavitt? Karoline shifted in her chair. That's not the point. On the contrary, Ibrahim replied, you raise the question of qualification. Now let's talk about relevance. You mentioned Harvard, MIT, and Stanford. All 3 are currently studying our education system in Burkina Faso. More visuals appeared, official letters and partnership proposals. Harvard is running case studies on our rural schools. MIT is adopting our low-cost engineering training methods. Stanford is exploring our digital learning model. Why? Because we've done in 3 years what no American state has achieved, raised literacy from 29% to 78%, and made STEM education accessible nationwide. Karoline tried to cut in. Those numbers are inflated. They are verified, Ibrahim said evenly, by UNESCO, the World Bank, and yes, your own U.S. Department of Education. Anderson Cooper leaned in. Mr. President, can you share one of these methods? Ibrahim's smile returned, softer this time. We start with the simplest truth. Respect knowledge, no matter where it comes from. We don't teach our children to imitate the world. We teach them to improve it. And for a moment, even Karoline was silent. Ibrahim's voice stayed steady, almost gentle. Ms. Leavitt, you seem to place great faith in American academic credentials. In that case, perhaps you'll find it interesting that I'm a visiting professor at 3 American universities. Karoline blinked. That's impossible. Not at all, Ibrahim continued. University of California, Berkeley, where I teach innovative governance. Columbia University, where I lecture on sustainable development, and Georgetown, where I run seminars on youth leadership. I can give you the dean's numbers if you'd like to verify. Anderson Cooper raised his eyebrows. That's quite remarkable, Mr. President. What's more remarkable, Ibrahim said, is that every single one of those lectures is packed. Students want to hear how we built an education system that works on a budget 50 times smaller than any U.S. state. Karoline tried a last swing. But you still lead a poor country. How can you call that success? Ibrahim's lips curved into a small, amused smile. Because, Ms. Leavitt, our so-called poor students regularly beat American students in international competitions. Last year alone, they won 47 medals in math, science, and programming Olympiads. Some of our 16-year-olds create apps that American companies buy for millions. The screen behind him lit up with medal counts and photos of smiling young winners. Our college graduation rate is 94%. Do you know the rate in the USO, Ms. Leavitt? She stayed silent. 63%, he said, answering for her. So yes, our underfunded schools are producing graduates at far higher rates. And perhaps the most important thing we teach is this: intelligence has no color, nationality, or price tag. Respect for knowledge is the starting point for growth, something some still haven't learned. The room was still. Karoline's earlier bravado had drained away, replaced with a tight, uneasy expression. I wasn't questioning African intelligence, she said quickly. I was just what? Ibrahim cut in softly. Assuming my competence could be judged by stereotypes about African education? Assuming American institutions are automatically superior? Anderson glanced between them, sensing the weight of the exchange. Mr. President, you seem very well prepared for this discussion. Preparation? Ibrahim shook his head. These are simply the facts of our daily work. Ms. Leavitt, on the other hand, seems to have skipped her homework. Karoline tried to pivot. Let's be realistic about resources. The U.S. invests billions in education. And yet, Ibrahim interrupted, your students rank lower in science and math than those in countries with a fraction of your budget. In the last 3 years, Burkina Faso has climbed 47 spots in global education rankings. The U.S. has dropped 12. Perhaps the problem isn't funding, but approach. A new chart filled the screen. International rankings, America's numbers sliding while Burkina Faso's climbed. Karoline's jaw tightened. You're twisting statistics. I'm quoting your own Department of Education, Ibrahim replied evenly. If that's twisting, then perhaps you should re-examine your own data collection. We pay our teachers a fair wage for our economy so they can focus on teaching instead of working 3 jobs. Revolutionary, isn't it? Anderson turned back to Karoline. Ms. Leavitt, how do you respond to these points about efficiency? Karoline hesitated. The silence dragged. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter. We would need to review our methods. Ibrahim nodded, gentle and unhurried. Of course, he said. Careful analysis matters. No one should draw big conclusions without the facts. Karoline's uneasy silence filled the studio for a beat. Anderson Cooper, sensing the need to move things forward, leaned in. Mr. President, for systems stretched thin by money and infrastructure, what practical advice would you give? Ibrahim looked straight into the camera, but his words landed as if aimed at every education minister listening. First, never underestimate what shortage can spark. When you lack equipment, people invent. Our teachers turned ordinary cell phones into classrooms and microscopes. They built science kits from discarded bottles and old circuit boards. Where there were no labs, communities made them, with sunlight, scrap, and stubborn curiosity. He smiled, not with triumph, but with quiet pride. Those stopgap fixes became reliable methods. Now researchers from wealthy institutions study those same techniques, not because they're quaint, but because they work. Karoline attempted a rebuttal. Surely more money improves schools, she said. Money helps, Ibrahim agreed. But money without direction is just noise. Vision without resources forces you to think differently. If forced to choose, I'd pick vision, because it turns scarce means into lasting change. Anderson pressed on. You've spoken about credentials earlier. Can you expand? Ibrahim shrugged as if it were obvious. We've inherited a habit. Prestige gets assumed before proof. A diploma on a wall should not be a shortcut to respect. If a village school is producing better engineers than a famous campus, the world should take notice. Reputation should follow results, not precede them. Karoline countered with the old line, Tradition and reputation matter. Ibrahim's eyes were kind but firm. Tradition matters when it helps people learn. But when tradition shields the same stale methods from scrutiny, it becomes an obstacle. Real education teaches students to question authority, including educational authority. The studio quieted. Ibrahim leaned in with a detail that sank like a weight. "One more thing," he said. "Last month I was asked to speak at an American conference on teaching under tight budgets." Anderson's brows rose. "Who invited you?" he asked. "Their Department of Education," Ibrahim replied calmly. "They wanted to hear exactly how we accelerated literacy and built rural STEM programs." A ripple passed across the studio. Karoline's confident color drained. Ibrahim continued, steady as ever. "Several major universities have asked to send teams to study our work in person. They want to see how we teach complex engineering using very little, how we scale digital learning with patchwork connectivity. These are not casual inquiries. They are requests for partnership." Karoline stammered, trying to regain footing. Ibrahim cut in gently. "I never claimed superiority, Ms. Leavitt. I said we are different. Our constraints taught us different answers. Valuable ideas can come from any classroom." He folded his hands, then delivered the point like a benediction. If true educational greatness exists, it will be measured not by the size of the budget or the fame of the seal on the diploma, but by whether young people learn to think, question, and build better lives. That is the kind of excellence that no arrogance can buy. The cameras lingered on Karoline's face, the bravado gone, replaced by a look that said she hadn't expected to be taught a lesson on live television. Anderson glanced back to Ibrahim, clearly struck by the clarity of his argument. Ibrahim leaned back in his chair, voice steady but warm. "Learning works both ways," he said. "The U.S. has much to teach us, and we have much to share. The only thing that stops that exchange is arrogance." Anderson Cooper smiled faintly, shaking his head. "That's a remarkably balanced way to see it." "It's the only way that works," Ibrahim replied. "In this century, no nation can afford to ignore useful ideas just because they came from somewhere unexpected." For the first time all evening, Karoline Leavitt was silent. Not defensive, not smirking, just silent. When she finally spoke, her tone was stripped of its earlier sharpness. "President Traoré, I owe you an apology." Ibrahim blinked, genuinely surprised. "That's not necessary, Miss Leavitt." She shook her head. "It is. I came here assuming that American education was automatically superior. I was wrong. Every fact you've shared has forced me to confront my own ignorance." Anderson leaned forward, clearly sensing the moment. "What changed your mind?" "The results," she admitted. "You can't argue with proof. And I can't pretend I was justified in what I assumed." Ibrahim's expression softened. "Admitting you were wrong takes courage. That's rare and admirable." Karoline gave a short, self-deprecating laugh. "Feels more like public humiliation, but I deserve it. I represent my country, and I was completely unaware of innovations that could help our own schools." "Ignorance isn't a crime," Ibrahim said gently. "Staying ignorant is." She took a long breath. "On behalf of the U.S. government, I'd like to formally invite you to present Burkina Faso's methods to all of our state education leaders." Anderson's eyebrows shot up. "That's a significant offer." "It's the least we can do," Karoline said firmly. "If our universities are asking to study these methods, our policymakers should be learning too." Ibrahim's face lit with a genuine smile. "It would be an honor. Education works best when knowledge is shared, not guarded." Karoline wasn't finished. "I also want to propose a true exchange program. American and Burkina Faso educators working in each other's classrooms, learning side by side." "Now you sound like a real educator," Ibrahim replied, clearly pleased. 6 months later, the change was visible to the world. Karoline was in Ouagadougou, leading the third American delegation to observe local schools. "I never thought I'd be here to learn," she told CNN, "but this country has lessons every nation should hear." By then, 23 countries had asked for similar partnerships. Burkina Faso was becoming a global reference point for educational innovation. One afternoon, Ibrahim's advisor, Aminata, entered his office with a stack of reports. "Sir, 847 universities have formally requested to study our methods. International interest has grown by 500% since the forum." Ibrahim nodded. "And the best part is, everyone benefits. The U.S. is improving rural schooling using our models. We're advancing our research with their technology." Karoline had transformed into one of Africa's loudest educational advocates. At Harvard, she told a packed auditorium, "My biggest lesson was that arrogance is the greatest enemy of learning." Her words resonated far beyond the classroom. Policymakers and business leaders alike began rethinking what Africa could contribute. A political analyst summed it up. Ibrahim didn't just defend his country, he opened doors to genuine cooperation. One quiet evening, Ibrahim walked through the palace gardens with Ajara. She looked at him thoughtfully. "You've changed the way the world sees African education." "No," Ibrahim said softly. "I just showed them what was already true, and they were finally ready to see it." "And Karoline?" Ajara asked. "She proved something rare, that smart people can admit mistakes and grow from them. That's more valuable than never being wrong at all." A year later, Karoline's book hit shelves. Lessons from Burkina Faso: How Humility Transformed My Educational Vision. In the dedication, she wrote, "President Ibrahim Traoré taught me that real education begins when we admit what we don't know." And somewhere in Ouagadougou, Ibrahim read those words, knowing that sometimes the most important lessons are the ones you never planned to teach.